I used to think I was just too much. Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too high maintenance. At least, that's what my husband kept telling me. Every time I said pregnancy was killing my back, or that his mom's old school ways were actually cruel, he'd sigh and accuse me of exaggerating. My mother-in-law was a saint, according to him. I was the ungrateful one. And like an idiot, I believed it. I told myself I was lucky. My husband, Jason, was a young CEO worth millions. I was nobody, just a girl from a regular family who'd worked her way up from intern to assistant. When he chased me for 6 months, picking me up from work in the rain, cooking me dinner, saying I was the only woman he'd ever love. What else could that be but real? On our wedding day, one of his drunk college buddies squinted at me and laughed. Wow. She looks just like her. Back then I thought he meant Jason and I looked like a perfect couple. Later, I realized he meant something very different. By the time I was 5 months pregnant, the fairy tale cracked. On the way to a prenatal appointment, Jason's phone slipped between the seats. I reached down to grab it and my fingers closed around something soft and lacy. A pair of ripped panties. Not mine. They were torn like someone had yanked at them in the middle of a performance. Something in me snapped. I sat there in that luxury SUV, holding that scrap of fabric, and for a full minute I couldn't breathe. I knew. I didn't want to, but I knew. Jason grabbed them so fast he almost dropped the wheel. They're not mine, he said too quickly. Someone must have left them. I lend this car out all the time. Don't start, Chloe. We fought, really fought, for the first time since we got married. I demanded a name. He started with excuses, then snapped, enough. Stop acting crazy. In his eyes, whatever love used to be there had gone flat and cold. After that, my appetite exploded. I ate to keep from thinking, to shove down that gaping, hollow ache with food. Jason grew distant. He came home late. He turned away when I climbed into bed. He flinched when I touched him. I tried to leave. I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend. My dad called, begged me to try to work it out. My friend, tired of seeing me hanging by a thread, finally said, look. Maybe he's garbage. But you're pregnant. You want to start over alone? Go home, squeeze him for everything you can. If his heart's not in the marriage, at least let his money be. It was awful advice, and I took it. 3 days later, Jason showed up at my friend's place with flowers and apologies. I convinced myself I could forgive him. I went back. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a picture. Jason smiling like the sun. A woman in a white dress tucked into his side, looking up at him like he hung the moon. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. Her face wasn't exactly like mine. The features were different. But the overall impression, the hair, the build, the soft, gentle vibe, was so close that at a glance, even my friends might have mistaken her for me. I remembered that drunk college friend at our wedding, slurring, she looks just like her. Turns out, I was the knockoff. She was the original. Her name was Hannah. Jason's first love. His white moonlight. The girl he'd never stopped carrying around in his chest like a ghost. And during my pregnancy, he'd found her again. She didn't just take him back. She made sure I knew it. She sent more pictures. Long, nostalgic paragraphs about how they fell in love in college, how he used to stand outside her dorm in the snow, how devastated he'd been when she married someone else. How he only married me because I was just like her. If I hadn't gotten married first, you never would have had a chance, she wrote once. You're just my shadow. He loves me. You're a stand-in. I was so angry my stomach cramped so hard I ended up in the ER, almost losing the baby. Jason read those messages and called her childish, said she was just being petty, that she didn't mean real harm. He actually felt sorry for her. I almost passed out from rage. That was the night something in me started to rot and harden at the same time. But I still stayed. Because I was weak. Because I was scared. Because I thought I loved him more than I loved myself. Then came the fire. I went to Jason's office one afternoon, my belly huge, just wanting to talk like grown-ups for once. When I walked in, he was there with Hannah, her perfect face tilted up to his, her hands clinging to his shirt. He sent her out and we fought. Really fought. Voices raised, words you can't take back. Somewhere in the middle of it, the fire alarm started blaring. People screamed in the hallway. Smoke seeped under the crack in the office door. I panicked. Jason shoved me back when I grabbed his arm. Go, he shouted. Take the stairs. What about you? I screamed. He didn't answer. He tore the door open and ran, straight in the direction Hannah had gone. The last thing I remember is the world filling with smoke and heat as I stumbled out into the hallway, calling his name and clutching my belly. Everything went black. When I woke up, my stomach was flat. My hands were big. Strong. Not swollen and clumsy. There was a woman leaning over me, crying in a high, sugary voice. "Jason, oh my God, you're awake, please don't scare me like that again. You promised you'd take care of me for the rest of my life." I opened my eyes and saw Hannah's face. Too close. Too familiar. Too smug. She called me Jay. The people in suits crowding around my bed called me Mr. Chen. I pushed myself up, heart pounding, and glanced at the glass wall opposite the bed. A tall, sharp-featured man with short hair and an expensive hospital gown stared back at me. Jason. I was in Jason's body. My name is Chloe, I thought wildly. I'm Chloe. I'm the pregnant one. Where is my baby? The door to the room slammed open. Someone rushed in, clutching their belly, pale and sweating, eyes wild with pain. It was my body. My face, gray with exhaustion. My huge, 8-month belly, hard and tight and low. She staggered toward me and grabbed my wrist. "What did you do to me?" She snarled with my voice, "Jason's soul in my body. Put me back. Put me back in my own body right now." In one heartbeat, I understood everything. Jason was in my body. And I had his. I stared at my own face twisted with fury and terror, and a thought slid through me like cold water. Maybe this is what karma looks like. Maybe the universe decided that if he wanted to treat my body like it was nothing, he could live in it for a while. Live my pain. Live my fear. Live with my mother-in-law. Why should I waste that? I turned away from him and wrapped an arm around Hannah's shoulders, pulling her close. Her eyes glittered with triumph even as she pretended to tremble. "Jay, she's scaring me," she whimpered. "Please get this crazy woman out of here." I looked right at my own face. "Chloe, stop it," I said in Jason's smooth, low voice. "You're going to scare Hannah. Security, get her out of here." My assistant, Mark, hesitated. "Mr. Chen, she's Mrs. Chen. We can't." I patted Hannah's head like she was a little dog. "You heard me. Look carefully. Who really runs this company? Who's the real spouse here?" Mark is ambitious, not brave. He got the hint fast and signaled 2 security guards. They grabbed my arms, Jason's soul trapped in my pregnant body, and dragged me out while he shouted, "I'm Jason. I'm Jason, you idiots. Let go of me." They taped his mouth to shut him up. A few minutes later, a nurse rushed into my room. "Mr. Chen," she panted, "your wife's water broke. She's bleeding. We need you to sign some paperwork. She might be in labor." I stood up. My legs were steady. My back didn't hurt. For the first time in months, my bladder felt like it actually belonged to me. I followed the nurse out into the corridor and saw my body on a stretcher, curled in on itself, hands wrapped around my stomach. I'd once thought I would give my life for that man. Now all I felt was a cold, bitter kind of justice. I walked alongside the gurney as doctors barked orders. Fetal weight is on the higher side. Natural birth might cause tearing or long-term complications. Family needs to decide if we move to a C-section. Jason clutched my gown sleeve, my gown, on my original body, and looked up at me with wide, frantic eyes. "Chloe," he gasped, "I was wrong. Okay? I was wrong. Please. Please let them do the C-section." I remembered sitting on our couch early in pregnancy, showing him medical articles on my phone. Stories of women with pelvic injuries, urinary incontinence, sexual dysfunction after difficult deliveries. I'd told him I was scared. He'd wrapped his arms around me and said, "Natural births are better for the baby. If you really love me, you'll give our kid the healthiest start. A little pain is worth it, right?" I looked from his pale face to the doctor. "Natural birth," I said clearly. "No C-section unless you absolutely have to." Then I bent down and kissed his sweaty forehead. "You love me, don't you?" I whispered in his ear. "You'll be willing to suffer a little more for me." He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Then the next contraction hit and he screamed. They took my body, his consciousness, into the delivery room. I waited outside. I could hear everything. His howling. His cursing. His voice breaking apart. Hours passed. I thought of all the times he'd rolled his eyes at childbirth scenes on TV. The way he'd said, "My mom had me in like an hour. She said it was just a strong push, not that big a deal. Don't be dramatic, Chloe." Now he was in there, living every second he dismissed. God, it was petty, but it felt good. Too good. Eventually, a doctor came out, frowning. "Mr. Chen, your wife's blood pressure is unstable and the baby's showing distress. We recommend an emergency C-section." The satisfaction vanished. My heart lurched. That was still my body. My baby. If something went wrong, I was the one who'd pay the price, no matter whose soul was inside. "Do it," I said instantly. "C-section. Now." I scrubbed in and went into the operating room. Jason was sprawled on the table, drenched in sweat, face white as paper, too exhausted to even groan properly. When he saw me, he tried to muster a glare. "See?" I said lightly, standing just out of the way. "It's not that bad. My mom said it's just one good push and the baby's out. What are you crying about?" His eyes filled with pure rage and humiliation. "Try it yourself, then," he whispered hoarsely. "If I could give birth, do you think I'd ever have needed to marry you?" The doctor cut in before I could answer, barking orders. I turned away. I couldn't watch the incision, couldn't watch my own body being opened. I just listened for the sound I needed most. A baby's cry. It came, a thin, reedy wail that grew louder and stronger. My chest squeezed. Tears burned my eyes. The nurse brought the baby over so I could see. A girl. Red-faced, wrinkled, furious at the world. She looked like a tiny, angry monkey. My tiny, angry monkey. "She's perfect," I whispered. Hannah slipped into the operating suite a few minutes later with red eyes and a trembling lower lip. She'd hovered outside the whole time, never once stepping away. "She's beautiful," she breathed, looking at my daughter. "Jay. If our baby had made it, he or she would have been this big by now. But I can't have kids anymore." Her voice cracked. If I were still my old, gullible self, that might have broken me. I might have looked at her and seen a tragic heroine. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I knew too much. Hannah had once texted me vivid descriptions of her miscarriage. Details about how she'd fallen, how she'd cried, how she'd nearly broken from grief. She'd told me how Jason held her and sobbed, how he'd never healed. Weeks later, a friend and I dug into her background and found out the pregnancy had been from her ex-husband. She'd thrown herself against a table on purpose to lose the baby, then used it as a weapon. As proof of her love. As justification for her cruelty. I almost lost my child because of the stress she caused me, and Jason still insisted she was just emotional. He said I was taking it the wrong way. Back then, I had no power. Now, I had his face, his voice, his signature, his fortune. And after seeing him pushed to the edge of what my body could endure, I was done playing fair. That night, after surgery, he finally woke up. The first thing he asked was, "Is it a boy?" I shook my head. "A girl." Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment, quickly buried. His family had been praying for a boy. His mom literally lit incense every day, begging the universe for a grandson to carry on the precious Chen name. "Girl, boy," he said finally, forcing a smile. "It's all the same. She's healthy. That's what matters." I didn't buy it for a second. I knew him too well. Still, he just carved through hell for that baby. I let it go. He tried to sit up and winced, one hand moving toward the incision under his gown. I leaned in close, let my expression soften just enough to keep him off balance. "Jason," I murmured, "I'm worried about your mental health. You keep insisting you're me. If this doesn't stop, I'm going to have to send you to one of our facilities." He stilled. "What are you talking about?" "You remember the hospital on the island, right?" I said quietly. "Our private psychiatric facility. Very quiet. No reporters. No visitors. We own the land, the buildings, the everything. Once someone goes in, who knows when they come out?" Real fear flashed across his face. He grabbed my wrist. My wrist in his original body. "Don't you dare," he hissed. "Then stop saying ridiculous things," I replied. "Stop telling people you're me. You're not. You're Chloe. I'm Jason. Understood?" He swallowed. "I'm Jason," he muttered under his breath, like he was testing the taste of it. Then he sighed. "Fine. Whatever you say." A nurse stepped in, and he instantly smoothed his face, pretending to be a meek, exhausted new mom. He'd figured it out. He knew if he wanted to avoid that island, he had to play the role. He had to be me. Good. Maybe for once he'd understand what my life had really been. A little while later, there was a commotion at the door. Jason's mother swept in, carrying a thermos and scolding a nurse for walking too slowly. She beamed when she saw her son me, in his body, and barely spared a glance at the woman who'd nearly died birthing her grandchild. "My baby boy," she cried. "Are you hurt? Are you exhausted? Did they give you enough to eat?" Jason propped himself up in the bed, face lighting with desperate relief. "Mom." She brushed right past him. She came to my side, patted my arm, and pushed the thermos into my hand. "I made your favorite soup," she cooed to me. "You must have been scared to death. This girl." She jerked her chin at the bed. "She's too fragile. A little pain and she acts like she's dying. If you didn't insist on this baby, I'd tell you to send her home to her parents." Jason stared. He looked from his mother to me and back again. "Mom," he said slowly, "the soup is for me, right? I just had surgery. I'm the one who—" My mother-in-law's smile vanished like someone flipped a switch. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "This is for Jason. Men need protein. You'll be fine. Women are made for this. Don't be dramatic." She hugged the thermos closer, then shoved it into my hands again. "Aren't you going to drink?" she prompted. I unscrewed the lid, inhaled the rich smell of slow-cooked broth, and looked at Jason over the rim. The look on his face, hurt, stunned, utterly betrayed, made something sharp and ugly in my chest loosen. "Thanks, Mom," I said gently, and took a sip. He shrank back against the pillows, eyes shining, lips pressed together. Welcome to my life, I thought. Soon after, Hannah appeared at the door again, hovering like a shy ghost. "Jay?" she whispered. We both answered, "Yeah?" in unison. She froze for half a second, then gave a little giggle and rushed over to my side, the side with the $1 million CEO, not the exhausted new mom. "I brought you your favorite snacks," she said to me, pulling a bag of expensive treats from her purse. Then she lifted those doe eyes to the bed. "Chloe, I hope you don't mind. I wanted to support him. I mean, support you both." Jason watched her with a look I'd never seen before. Not love. Not adoration. Shock. Because Hannah wasn't bothering to hide anymore. Not from him. Not from me. Not from anyone. Later, when she thought I'd gone home, she slipped back into the room. I paused in the hallway, just out of sight. "Even if you had the baby, he'll never love you the way he loves me," she told Jason softly. "You know that, right? He only married you because I was gone. You're my stand-in. You always have been." I waited for Jason to defend me. To say something. Anything. Instead, he sighed. "He's just too in love with me," Hannah went on. "That's why he does crazy things. You shouldn't blame him." I heard a rustle, as if Jason had flinched. He whispered something I couldn't quite catch, but the tone said enough. He was still protecting her. Still excusing her. Even in my body. Even after everything. That was the moment something inside me finally froze over. I sent him to the best wing of the hospital, because it was still my body he was inhabiting, and I wasn't about to let it get wrecked beyond repair. But I gave strict orders, no visitors unless I approved. No Hannah. No Mom. No one. Meanwhile, I went back to our house. To my house. To his money. To his computer. To his accounts. Jason had over $10 million in liquid assets spread across multiple banks and investment accounts. I knew enough from working at his company to move it quietly. I transferred every cent into a new account only I knew about. I couldn't touch the real estate or the shares yet. Those needed more time and more signatures. But if the universe snapped us back into our original bodies tomorrow, I wouldn't be penniless. After a long day of smiling at employees and sending emails in his name, I opened the bedroom door and stopped cold. Hannah was sprawled across my bed in a white lace nightgown, hair falling perfectly over her shoulders, looking like a lingerie catalog fallen angel. Of course she was. I stepped inside. "Jay," she purred, pushing herself up on one elbow. "You're home." "Yeah," I said, shutting the door behind me. I'd prepared for this. Before coming in, I'd swished a mouthful of whiskey and spat it out in the garden, leaving the smell on my breath. I loosened my tie and messed up my hair. Time to act. I let my shoulders sag, my face crumple with fake despair. The company's in trouble, I muttered, stumbling toward the bed. Between the fire and the bad press, our projects are frozen. If my dad finds out I messed up this badly, he'll cut me off. No inheritance. No trust. Nothing. Hannah's eyes went wide. Is there any way to fix it? She asked quickly. Anyone who can help? Maybe, I said. There's one investor. Sato. A shark from a Japanese conglomerate. He's the only one still willing to even take my calls. I swallowed, letting my voice shake. But he has conditions. What conditions? She demanded. He wants to meet you, I said hesitantly. He's seen your photos online. He thinks you're gorgeous. He said if you accompany him to dinners, parties, keep him entertained, he'll consider saving the company. Her lips parted. That's it? She said after a second. Dinner? I looked away, as if ashamed. It might be more than that. I don't know. I don't want to pimp you out, Hannah. I'll let my hands tremble. I love you too much for that. She sat up fully now, eyes shining with almost feverish determination. If it's for you, I don't care, she said. I'll do anything, Jason. You know that. Even if he looks at you the wrong way? I pushed. Even if he touches you? She hesitated for just a heartbeat. Then she crawled across the bed and grabbed my hand. I said anything, she repeated. You're all I have, Jay. If this is the price to stay with you, I'll pay it. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was insane how easily she sacrificed everything when it suited her, and then turned around and called herself a victim. I hugged her, buried my face in her hair, and whispered, You're incredible. I don't deserve you. In my head, I thought. You deserve exactly what's coming. What Hannah didn't know was that Sato wasn't a shark from a Japanese conglomerate. He was a low-level thug I'd paid a hefty fee to play a role. The night I introduced them, I watched from a distance as she smiled, drank, laughed at his terrible jokes, then disappeared with him into a private room. I didn't follow. I didn't want to know the details. I'd already seen enough ugliness from both of them to last a lifetime. Later, she came back to me with mascara streaked under her eyes, hands shaking, voice thin with disgust and fear. Promise me, she whispered, clutching my arm. Promise you won't leave me after this. Promise you won't go back to her. I did this for you, Jason. For us. I stroked her hair and let my expression crumple with fake emotion. I swear, I said. I'll divorce Chloe as soon as she's discharged. I'll marry you. And her daughter can call you Mom. We'll raise her together. She sobbed with relief. And I realized something. When a woman loves someone the way she loved Jason, she'll jump off any cliff he points to. That kind of blind devotion is terrifying. And very, very useful. While Hannah was being my willing weapon, I checked in on Jason at the hospital every day. He looked worse each time. Hemorrhoids. A painful rash. Engorged breasts, mastitis from struggling to breastfeed. Sleep deprivation so deep his eyes had permanent shadows. Sometimes he stared at the ceiling like he was already halfway gone. Any word from Hannah? He asked once, voice small. I frowned. Why do you care? After everything she put you through? She was just too in love with me, he murmured. That's why she did what she did. I don't blame her. You shouldn't either. Be nice to her, okay? In his head, all her cruelty was just overflow from a heart too full. All my pain was just me being oversensitive. He'd never loved me the way he loved her. He'd loved an idea of her so fiercely he excused anything she did. It was almost funny. Almost. The day before he was scheduled to go home, I went to check on our daughter and heard voices through the cracked nursery door. Hannah's and Jason's. I told you, Hannah was saying, that smug lilt back in her tone, you'll never beat me. You could bring a child into this world and he'd still love me more. You're just my shadow. You're insane, Jason hissed in my voice. You're not even trying to pretend anymore. You think you're the victim? She shot back. Let me tell you something since you're already crazy enough that no one will believe you. I leaned closer. The miscarriage? She said softly. The one everyone cried over? I did that on purpose. I threw myself against the table. That baby wasn't even Jason's. It was my ex-husband's. But hey, at least it was useful once. Silence. Then Jason whispered, horrified, you killed your own child? The heartbeat was already gone, she said blithely. But yeah, I sped things up. Pain is pain. Might as well get some mileage out of it. You think I'm going to waste a good tragedy? Even knowing all this, hearing her say it casually like she was talking about returning a dress made my stomach twist. You're lying, Jason rasped. You're saying this just to hurt me. You've always been dramatic. She laughed. You're the one locked up here babbling about body swaps, she said. No one believes a word you say, Chloe. You're just the crazy ex. I can tell them anything now. Speaking of which. Guess what else? Jason said he's going to divorce you and give me your child. You'll disappear one day, and no one will care. Isn't that romantic? I pushed the door open just as Jason lunged. The two of them struggled. From where I stood, all I saw was my body, pale and weakened, reaching out. Hannah jerked her arm, twisted, and deliberately flung herself backward. Her head hit the wall with a sickening thud. She crumpled. Jason, I shouted, rushing in as if I hadn't seen the calculated look in her eyes a second earlier. What the hell did you do? Jason stared at his own hands like they belonged to someone else. I didn't, she fell. Do you seriously expect anyone to believe that? I snapped. Hannah is the kindest person I've ever met. She was just here visiting, and you attacked her? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. He'd stood there with me, time after time, calling me dramatic, jealous, irrational every time she accidentally hurt me. Now he was on the other side. The crazy woman no one believed. I scooped Hannah up, ignoring the way she melted into my arms like a fainting heroine. If anything happens to her, I said coldly, I'll bury you. On the way to the ER, Hannah's eyes fluttered open. Jay, she whispered, how long? How long were you standing there? Long enough, I said tightly. She relaxed, satisfaction glinting in her gaze. Good, she murmured, then let her eyes roll back again, milking the moment for all it was worth. Her injuries turned out to be minor. A concussion. Some bruising. But she insisted she needed to be admitted overnight, clinging to me and rambling about nightmares and dizziness. I agreed. The next morning, she checked herself out. Or rather, she tried to. The man I'd hired to play Sato visited her that night. Whatever happened in that room broke something in her. She went home, not back to the hospital. I didn't go see Jason for a week. When I finally did and signed his discharge papers, I took him home. Only it didn't feel like his home anymore. My mother-in-law gave him the cold shoulder, muttering about ungrateful daughters-in-law under her breath. I gave him chores, cutting remarks, and silence. Basically, I gave him my old life. He flinched, but he took it. One evening, when the baby was finally asleep and my mother-in-law was out gossiping with friends, Jason looked at me across the dim living room. He'd just finished sterilizing bottles and folding baby clothes. He looked exhausted. Hollowed out. Can you take me back to the building? He asked quietly. Where the fire happened. I stiffened. Why? Because that's where this started, he said. That's where we swapped. Maybe if I go back, I can. I don't know. Fix it. I stared at him. You want your old life back so badly? I thought. After all this? After you've eaten even a fraction of what I've eaten? But something else slipped in. Fear. Because as much as I hated him, as much as I'd made him suffer, I still had a baby to raise. A future to build. And I didn't know how long the universe was going to let us stay like this. If we swapped back out of nowhere and I had nothing, I'd be right back where I started. So I made a decision. I called the housekeeper into the room. Tell him what your days used to look like, I told her, nodding toward Jason. She ducked her head and recited, careful and precise. Mrs. Chen used to get up at 5 a.m. to cook breakfast for the whole family, she said. At 7 she helped your mother pick outfits and drove her to her dance class. At 8 she'd iron your father's shirts, prepare his briefcase, send him off. At 8:30 she'd help you with your tie and walk you to the garage. At 9 she and I would do all the laundry and clean every room. At 10 she'd start planning lunch and dinner, go to the market, pick your mother up, and come home to cook again. She kept going. On and on. An entire day of invisible labor, every task built into the bones of the house. Jason's face drained of color as he stared at her. Chloe did all that? He whispered. Who else? I said softly. You think this place ran on autopilot? He dropped his gaze. For the first time, real guilt, real understanding, flickered inside him. Okay, he said hoarsely. I'll prove I'm better now. Just give me a chance. He woke at 5 the next morning. He chopped vegetables badly, burned eggs, fumbled with his father's cufflinks, stumbled through the day like a man trapped in a nightmare he'd written for someone else. By 10 that night, when I came home from work, he was sitting in the dark living room, staring at nothing. "You're back," he said faintly. "Rough day?" I asked. He let out a broken laugh. "I used to think she had it easy," he said. "That she was just spending my money, living the rich wife dream. I didn't see any of this. I didn't want to see it." He looked up at me, eyes shining. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm really, really sorry, Chloe." For a moment, something inside me almost cracked. But then I remembered Hannah's smirk. My mother-in-law's cold eyes. That ripped lace in my hand in the car. The slap I'd taken when I tried to defend myself. The words, "You're just her shadow." I reached into my bag and pulled out a document. "Sign this," I said. He blinked. "What is it?" "A divorce agreement," I replied calmly. "Half the assets transfer to me. We share custody of the baby. You marry Hannah. I walk away." He stared at the papers. "You're divorcing me right after I gave birth?" he asked, voice shaking. "You think that's fair?" "You gave me these terms months ago," I said quietly. "Just not on paper. You made it clear who you loved. You made it clear what I was worth." He flinched. Then his shoulders slumped. "You're right," he muttered. "I don't deserve you." He picked up the pen and, under the soft wash of moonlight, carefully signed my name. Chloe Chen. His handwriting looked so much like mine it startled me. For a second, I felt strangely free. We got the divorce the next day. Afterward, I kept my word and drove him to the burned-out office building. The upper floors were sealed off, the whole place cordoned with tape and concrete barriers. It was impossible to get to the exact spot where we'd passed out. "I'll see if there's another way and some other time," I told him. "Be patient." He nodded, looking tired and small. But that night, alone in my car, I felt a strange pressure in the air, like a storm front rolling in. Something was changing. If the world decided to snap us back without warning, I needed to be ready. So I went to see Hannah. For the first time since everything had started, I called and told her to meet me at the condo she and Jason had rented as their love nest. The rain was light and steady, the kind that turns the city into a smear of neon and wet asphalt. She stood outside the building in a white dress, hair glossy, mascara perfect, looking like a saint in a perfume ad. When she saw Jason get out of the car, her whole face lit up. "Jay," she called, hurrying toward me. I staggered a little, like I was drunk. I'd poured another shot of whiskey on my shirt for effect. Everything from here on out needed to be perfect. I walked up to her, cupped her face, and said in a slurred voice, "Chloe, you came." Her smile froze. "What? Did you just call me?" she asked. "Chloe," I repeated happily. "You're so pretty. You've been mad at me for so long. Are you still mad? Please don't be. You know you're the one I really love, right? Not her." Hannah grabbed the front of my shirt, nails biting into my skin. "Say that again," she demanded. "Say her name again." "Chloe," I whispered, swaying. "My wife. My real wife. You didn't think I took that stand-in seriously, did you?" Tears spilled down Hannah's cheeks. "Jason," she choked. "You're lying." "I only got with her because you disappeared," I said, going in for the kill. "When your marriage fell apart, I thought I could finally be with you. But she was convenient. Easy. She looked like you. That's all. I used her, okay? Are you happy? Does that fit the story you wrote in your head?" Hannah's breath hitched. "I did everything for you," she whispered. "I divorced my husband. I endured your mother calling me a homewrecker. I let that creep," her voice cracked. "I did things I will never be able to forget, just because you asked me to. You knew what he was like, Jason. You knew. And you still sent me." "Come on," I said lightly. "Your kid wasn't even mine. You said it yourself. All that drama over nothing." She shoved me hard. I let myself fall backward, landing on the wet concrete with a grunt, blinking up at her like I didn't understand why she was so upset. "How could you?" she screamed, sobs tearing out of her. "How could you use me like that? You said you loved me. You said I was your only one. I ruined my life for you." Rain plastered her hair to her face. Her white dress clung to her frame. She looked, for a moment, exactly like the tragic heroine she'd always played. Then she turned and bolted toward the street. "Hannah," I shouted. Headlights flashed, brakes screamed, people yelled. She didn't die. The doctors told her she was lucky. She'd live. She just wouldn't walk again. Both of her legs were too damaged. When I heard the news, my first reaction wasn't joy. It was a hollow, exhausted kind of emptiness. We'd all been circling this cliff for months. She'd just gone over first. The next morning, I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into the kitchen. Jason's father was back from overseas. He sat at the head of the table, perfectly pressed shirt, expensive watch, cool eyes taking everything in. Jason's mother fluttered around him like a nervous bird. Jason, still in my body, sat stiffly, face pale. "Sit," his father said when he saw me. The hair on the back of my neck rose. We ate in tense silence. At 9, I pretended to get a phone call and slipped out the back door, heading for the garage where I'd stashed bags and a go bag. I never made it. A black SUV shot out of nowhere and slammed into my car. The airbag exploded, white and hot and sudden. When I came to, my hands and feet were bound, and I was lying on a cot in a dark room. Jason and his father stood at the foot of the bed. His father's smile was thin and cold. "How do you feel, Chloe?" he asked. I forced my voice to stay calm. "I'm Jason," I said. "Your son. What's going on?" He chuckled. "You almost fooled everyone," he said. "Almost. But you can't fool me. A father knows his son." He leaned forward, eyes sharp as knives. "How did you switch bodies with my son?" My heart started pounding. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I'm Jason. That's my wife." Jason, in my body, glared at me. "Give it up," he snapped. "Dad, I've been telling you for days. She's been using my name, my accounts, my life." His father cut him off with a curt gesture. "I don't care which of you is which," he said. "I care about results. We tried taking you back to the office. Nothing. So we'll use other methods." They dragged me out of the room and into a helicopter. We flew over water. We landed on an island. I knew where we were before I saw the sign. The private psychiatric facility Jason's family owned. A place I'd joked about once with him, saying it sounded like an evil lair in a movie. He'd smiled and said, "It's isolated. Quiet. Good for the brand. Don't think about it." Now I was being wheeled down into the basement. The walls were lined with glass-fronted rooms. Inside, patients lay strapped to beds or curled in corners, eyes wild, bodies shaking. Some screamed. Some were so tired they couldn't even whimper. My skin crawled. "What is this?" I whispered. Jason's father smiled pleasantly. "Research," he said. "Very valuable research. The official paperwork says we're testing treatments for chronic pain and severe mental illness. In reality," he shrugged, "let's just say we're a little ahead of regulations." They strapped me to a bed in one of the rooms, leather digging into my wrists and ankles. Jason stood on the other side of the glass, watching with a mixture of anger and nerves. "Don't worry," he said. "They won't actually hurt you. Not really. This is still my body." "Listen to me," I said urgently, heart racing. "You have no idea what your dad is capable of. You've never wanted to know. Get me out of here, Jason. Get us both out." He hesitated. His father nodded to a nurse, who wheeled a tray closer. On it sat a syringe filled with clear liquid. "This is a neurotoxin," his father explained conversationally, as if discussing the wine list. "It doesn't damage organs. It doesn't leave marks. It just amplifies pain signals. 10, 20 times what they should be. It's remarkable." The nurse swabbed my arm. Panic clawed up my throat. "I don't know how we switched," I shouted. "If I knew, do you think I'd still be here having this conversation? It just happened." Jason's father sighed. "Stubborn," he said. "Fine. We'll see how you feel after a dose." The needle slid into my shoulder. I squeezed my eyes shut. I braced for agony. It never came. When I opened my eyes, the room looked different. Not because the furniture had changed. Because my body had. I was standing on the other side of the glass, on my own 2 feet, in my own battered, thin frame, hospital gown hanging off my shoulders. Strapped to the bed inside, in Jason's body, was Jason. His eyes went wide. "What did you do?" he screamed as the toxin hit his system. Pain twisted his features. His muscles jerked. "I'm Jason. I'm Jason." He howled, voice breaking. "Dad, stop. Please, Dad." His father didn't even flinch. "Turn it down a bit," he told the nurse. "We don't want him passing out too fast. We need him conscious." My hands shook. My incision throbbed with phantom pain. I pressed a hand to my stomach, took a breath, and forced my face into something resembling concern. "Dad," I called softly through the intercom. "My scar hurts. I'm going to go lie down. I'll come back later." He waved a distracted hand. "Go. We'll handle things here." I walked out of that basement on rubber legs, every step fueled by pure adrenaline. Once I cleared the last security door, I ran. Out the side exit. Down the dock. Onto the nearest speedboat. I'd watched Jason drive one a few times on summer trips. I prayed I'd soaked up enough. The engine roared to life and I shot away from the island, waves slapping against the hull. Halfway to shore, I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. I dialed 911. "I want to report illegal human experimentation at Chen Island Behavioral Health," I told the dispatcher. "They're torturing patients in the basement. I have video." Before leaving, I'd propped my phone against a corner and hit record, capturing everything that happened in front of that glass wall. Jason's father explaining the drug. Jason screaming. The nurse injecting him. I uploaded the footage to the cloud and sent the link to the dispatcher. By the time I reached the mainland, police cruisers were already waiting. "You the caller?" a young officer asked, rushing to help me off the boat. I nodded too fast. The world spun. "Let's get you in the car," he said gently. "We'll take you to the station. You're safe now." Later, when everything came crashing down in the news, Chen family scandal, illegal drug trials, offshore human rights violations, I sat on a worn-out couch in a tiny rented apartment, holding my daughter and watching the coverage. Jason's father and Jason were both arrested. They'd hurt too many people for too long and left too much evidence. My baby was returned to me officially, on paper, as if I hadn't grown her from scratch inside my own body. Hannah survived. She'd lost both legs. She visited Jason once in prison. The tabloids loved it, ex-lovers turned cursed enemies. According to one article, she rolled her wheelchair up to his cell and told him she wished the switch had never undone. That she wished he'd stayed in my body forever and rotted on that island in my place. He tried to explain. To say he hadn't known. That he'd never approved any of it. But no one cared. The myth of the golden couple who fell from grace was too juicy to resist. As for me? I healed. Slowly. Physically, emotionally, financially. I used the money I'd moved before the divorce to start over in a different city with my daughter. I testified in court, then walked out and refused to look back at the defense table. 1 year after the island, I ran into the young officer who'd helped me off the boat. His name was Ethan. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe I just stood up straighter now. We started talking. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners turned into weekends at the park with my daughter, her little hand in his, giggling as he chased her around. He never treated me like a victim. He never treated me like a substitute. He looked at me like I was a whole person, not a shadow of some other woman. We got married in a small ceremony in a rented hall with cheap fairy lights and mismatched chairs. My daughter wore a little white dress and refused to walk down the aisle unless Ethan carried her. He did. When people ask about my past life now, I just smile and say, it burned down. Because it did. In an office fire. In a hospital basement. In a family that ate me alive and called it love. All that's left is a scar and a story. And the quiet, steady warmth of a future I built myself. For the first time, my life doesn't feel like someone else's script. It feels like mine. And this time, I'm the one holding the pen.